So I think at this point I'm just going to start. I just want to give you a quick overview of what I've come to learn over the past year, having done several lean startup machines, startup weekends, and working with some big companies, what lean startup is. And so today I'm just going to have an overview actually of a lot of different innovation methods. And they're just different tools for different kind of things. So who's read any of these books? Anyone's familiar with these books? So one of the problems is it's never been codified. So there's no one thing. It's not like Six Sigma or Lean. It's just a collection of terms and methods and tools that different people have applied. This, of course, is a seminal book. But if you really want to learn about the history, I think I really recommend Tashi Ono's book that talks about lean manufacturing. And the other things you might have heard of custom development or business model generation. So it's a loose collection of methods and tools to solve interesting problems. And this is the guy that evolved it based on his observation that, in fact, startups don't fail because you're not working hard enough, no matter what your mother says. There's a failure rate that's very, very high. And so he framed his definition of lean startup within these guidelines. So you are developing a product under conditions of extreme uncertainty. So that's kind of the space that startup companies operate in. So one of the downside is it's never been codified. A lot of people come up with their own different definitions. And I've been thinking a lot about this. And by the way, my background is I'm a chemist, so I don't write code. So you probably think from a different perspective. And this is the definition that I've come up with after several months. The big test being, can I explain it to my parents over the telephone, right, without using buzzwords. And I challenge anyone to come up with a better definition. So lean startup fundamentally is about running the simplest experiment to quickly test the business assumption. And the output words are simplest and quickly test the business assumption. Lean startup, by the way, does not alter the fundamentals. And usually when I start these talks, I always just remind people, especially the younger kids, getting someone to hand you $1 is very, very hard. It really, really is. But if you solve it, you're in the money. Lean startup does not alter the fundamentals, but it can help you get there faster. Get to the bad news, so in other words, you get to fail sooner and faster. That's the idea. And of course, there's a speed component to this, so if you run fastest, you should tend to win. Curtis.
Can we use mine?
Any questions? Anyone want to challenge this definition? Anyone have a better one? Anyone have a worse one? Is this pretty clear what it is? Okay, so usually when we talk about fast learning, when you listen to entrepreneurs, and you see this like all the hackathon, the LSMs and sort of weekends, is they tell you about these things. Oh, this is the thing that I want to build, and these are my customers' problems, and these are some of the other topics that they address. And it's important from a lean startup perspective is actually fundamentally accept that everything you're saying is an assumption. Okay, it's just an assumption. These things aren't proven yet. And the role of a lean entrepreneur is to basically convert these assumptions into facts. I typed the word fact in Google image, this came up. I typed the word assumption, and this came up. The assumption of merit. But this is purely accidental. There's nothing biblical about this. But the point is, so you have to convert all your assumptions into facts, and that's what you're supposed to do. That's the approach, to validate your assumptions. So I've done a lot of work with, I've done this, I think about 4 LSMs in one sort of weekend. It's really quite interesting. Has anyone ever attended any of those? It's a weekend. You're working with strangers in a weird space. It's unnatural, but somehow a lot of good things come out of it. And I have a video that actually I'm going to show it. But just what I find very, very interesting is people who've never heard of lean startup or customer development, after 2 days, make some pretty profound statements. And so I'll share that link later. This is a 6-month video I made. And just people say things like, holy shit, like I have to go validate my own company now. And people, one professor, Howard, he said, I'm a developer, my instincts are to start coding. And now I know that in fact you don't start coding first, you have to validate your assumptions first. So that's the approach of a startup program. On the enterprise level, it's a little bit different. And I've only had one formal experience with that, and that's at TLC. TLC is a company that writes software code for libraries, and that's as dull as it sounds. But it's a very important company. You know the good folks, right?
Yeah.
They were the first to put library data on a CD-ROM. Was it with Toshiba? And that standing machine now is at the Smithsonian. It's based out of Inwood, West Virginia. And so it's a 40-year-old company, and this is in fact what they're trying to fight. So, you know, how do you stay alive? And so, and it's run, and actually Jay Bloom, the CTO of the company, was one of the speakers last August at the meetup we had on this topic. So back in November, so I attended a hackathon at Inwood, West Virginia, same kind of concept, 2 days. And there were 9 ideas that were pitched. 2 of them actually became actual products. So one of the things I think that's really noticeable that you see on the outcome is you get the same kind of energy and buzz when people talk. I mean, this is fun, right? You walk away that weekend really excited and invigorated. You see that too. But I think there's additional vetting that you see at the enterprise level. One is it's a great way to quickly vet your ideas. So we have this idea, should we try it, should we not? It's a great way to cycle through things with not a lot of expense. And also it's a very good to identify your blind spots. I think a lot of companies, as they grow, right, you're always thinking, well, what am I missing? Larger companies tend to, I think, become very lethargic and they miss things. And if you're large enough, you just buy your competitors out. But that's a fundamental challenge at big organizations. Innovation then becomes very sluggish. So I think this is a really neat way within a company to kind of vet ideas. So even the janitor has an idea, you know, he's empowered to kind of, instead of just putting the suggestion box and say, well, maybe I can run a couple of experiments and validate some of this information. So I think that's what the real value of running experiments is. But one of the downsides is, remember, we talked about, you know, an existing company is churning and making money has this culture. The integration is a huge problem. And in fact, I mean, Jay Bloom says this, you can't find 10 companies, big companies that are lean startup companies. You just don't exist. There's not that many of them. And one thing I found at last summer's meetup, in fact, there's 2 companies, the exact same thing. TLC, they took part of the company and carved it out called TLC Labs. I found another speaker who worked at Sheridan, which is a publishing company. They also created a company called Sheridan Labs. You have to carve out your company to run your experiments away from the mothership. There's a lot of cultural issues. One of the real problems actually is the finance people. They hate these kinds of concepts because there's a lot of unknown. You know, they want to be able to know, do their budgeting. So there are real issues whenever you're trying, real challenges that have to be addressed when you do lean startup in an existing enterprise level. But this has remained, you know, the lean startup is yet to be validated, either at the startup level or at the big company level. But I'm very optimistic about the enterprise because I think it's easier to develop products at the enterprise level than at the startup level. And I think this is an opportunity for great impact. But this is, again, it remains to be seen as how effective an innovative method that is. So, that's it. Well, thank you very much. Let's move on to our next speaker.